Hey Creagears, and welcome back to the final boss episode of this Custom Amiibo month 2020. After almost a month of work, we can finally complete the squad of bosses with the most voted boss in the poll that I put on Twitter. But we're going to be ending this with a very nice amiibo to make, the Steelhead. Well, then we better get started. Before the official start of the project, we wanted to show these clips. Here you can see the first version we made of the body of the Steelhead. This project was especially hard for us because I'm not the greatest when it comes to sculpting big bodies or all bodies in general. Just accessories or clothing? No problem. But when it comes to a sculpt of a big body with the right proportions, it gets a lot harder. Normally we would have just left this out, but we wanted to show this because Muna remembered this comment from a long time ago. Normally we wouldn't have more amiibos because the large price of the figures, but here you can see it going wrong, but we just take a break to reassess what went wrong and make a new plan. And with most other folds, we are just able to sculpt or paint over it, so we don't worry about it too much. But now for the real start. For this we continue to work on the body. As a base we make a version out of aluminum foil. Here you can also see the difference between the two bases. Then we roll out the clay into a sheet that we are able to apply over the body of the Steelhead. This we had already done with the mouth with some pink polymer clay, but we need to cover the rest of the body with black and grey. For smoothing the skin, I used the middle of my sculpting tool as a flat roller. This gets it really nice and flat. Next I took a clay snake and used this to make the gills of the Steelhead. For this I applied the snake onto the side and smoothed one side into the rest of the skin. Then for the other side I used a sculpting knife and extended the lip of the gill. Maybe you can also see the texture that we put on the back of the salmon. For this we made a stamp from some armature wire and pressed it into the soft clay to make the scales. After the gills we got some more snakes of clay and worked out the wrinkles on the face of the Steelhead. One below the eye, which I transitioned into the lip, and one above the eye. I also used a very thin snake to make the lip of the lower jaw. For this we also looked at how dogs pull their lips up when agitated, so we were able to put this into the sculpt. And it also helped out for the form of the pump in its mouth. After I was able to apply all the details with the wrinkles, nostrils, and I had stamped some smaller scales near the face, I only had to make a few more things, starting with the teeth. In contrast to most other monsters, the Steelhead has very blunt teeth, probably because its main form of attack is its bomb, so I had to watch out for this. Even so, I still feel like I made them too pointy. Hey! As for the making of the teeth, I rolled a thin snake of clay and dulled out the ends and cut off a small chunk and pressed this into the mouth of the Steelhead. After this was set in place, I dulled out the snake again and repeated this process until I had a nice mouth full of chompers. For the next step, I got a plate of green polymer clay and pulled this over the bottom of the salmonid to make the pants for the Steelhead. For this I actually enhanced the wrinkles that the clay made to make it seem more like a plastic fabric that it found in the ocean. As a final step, I used an X-Acto knife to cut out one smooth edge across the top, and I made sure it had a nice edge near the tail. And as a final thing to sculpt, I take some chunks of clay and I make these into the fins. For this I start with a triangle and extend to one end and round this back to make the base of the fins. Next I stretch another end, but more so towards the back of the unused point, and then I use my finger to squeeze the space in between these points to make the skin between the ends. To finish this part, I used my X-Acto knife to score some lines into the lowered part to make some veins. When this is done to both fins, I stick them to the body with an opening in the fins for the belt that we're going to attach later. Then we're finally finished with the sculpting, so we can bake the clay to the instructions and put them onto a little wooden base for easier handling. Next we can make the decorations for the Steelhead. For this I start off with the wok on his forehead. For the base of this cookware we cut out a circle of 2mm foam and we make 3 smaller circles where we're added for the base of the tires that are going to cover the salmonid's back. Next we have already cut out a 1cm belt that we're going to stretch to make it a curve, and we glue the inside of this to the base. Then we're going to cut it to length and glue it shut. Then I'm using my hot glue to put a blob onto some baking paper, and I make 3 grooves into this blob to have it make 6 slices. These will pull from the paper and glue it to the ends of the pump on the Steelhead's mouth, but that's all later. Now that the wok has done drying, we can bend some wire and make the handles and glue this onto the foam with some super glue. Then we can glue the blobs onto the pumps. But for a final bit of decoration, we grab our X-Acto knife and we carefully score a tire track into the foam, being careful not to cut through it. The same tire track pattern we're also going to apply to these foam discs, but first we need to cut them out. Then we can sand the side smooth and give it a fillet. And finally we can draw on the pattern with a pencil and carve it in with a Dremel. Making it so the pattern continues from the side to the front and to the back. Finally, we can add a chamfer to a 6mm hole we drilled in the middle, and we do this 3 more times to make all the tires. 1 for the wok and 3 more for the rest of the back. As a final decoration, we can start to add the belts. But to get this to the right position, we first need to glue on the tires. Then we can make a belt that goes from the inside of the fin to the side of the tire. From both sides. Then we add the final tires for the connection later. But first we glue on another belt across the belly to connect it to the other ones. And a few little pieces to connect all of the tires. Lastly, we add one that goes from the pants to make some suspenders. The ends of which we're going to make by bending some wire. Gluing this on. And gluing a piece of foam over it as a clamp. Then we're making some notches into all of the belts with a wood burner. And supergluing a lot of these small pieces of coffee stirring sticks into them to make the hinges that would hold the belts together. Then we use the previously drilled holes as a guide to drill the holes into the clay. Because in the next step we're going to be cutting into the sculpture by the edge of the pants with an X-Acto knife. And we're going to extract all of the aluminum foil from the inside to make it hollow. This will be where we're going to store all the wires that are going to power the LEDs that will come out of the pump ends and all of the tires. As a final piece, we cut out the parts of the back that are going to be the bomb on its head. This we cut out of some plastic office folder and held the edges together with pliers while holding a lighter just close enough to barely melt the plastic. Just be careful when you do this, or if you're still young. Here we tried with hot glue, but this didn't work. Neither will super glue, trust us. Finally, we can start to paint this beast. Luckily, it's a pretty simple paint job for the expert sculpting we had to do with all of the clay and the different types of foam. For the first layer, we give everything a very thorough black base coat. Next we're applying some very dark green onto the pants. Then we make some salmon grey for the final time. I'm almost going to miss it. Although it's a different version with some more olive green into it, because the scales are a bit greener than the skin of most salmonids. But nevertheless, we can cover his body with this mixture, being careful not to get it into his mouth or onto the gear. Next I take a mixture of natural green and dark green to make the ink of the salmonids. And I apply this onto the ink of the base. I also use some around the holes of the tires as if it's leaking ink. Just one layer though, as to not make it that bright. Then we can add some silver onto the suspenders. And we make a gunmetal by mixing silver and a little bit of black for all of the belts and the plateaus of the tires and the wok. But we must not forget about the bumps. When all of these has some color, we can go back over the hinges in the belts and the handles on the wok with some normal silver to make these details stand out just a bit more. Next I take the bag and draw this logo and some other labels onto it with a permanent marker. And for a final extra detail, I take a push pin and poke it 3 times per side into one part of the belt as rivets. Then after adding some white, we can cover the mouth back up with a red pink, being cautious not to get this onto the white teeth. When the mouth is as desired, we can add a mix of yellow and skin color to the eyes, with a wider spot around the red eyes and the black pupil. Finally, we can add some hot glue blobs onto the holes of the tires and the back onto the wok. And we test fit the pumps while adding a high pigment green onto the hot glue blobs and the plastic black. This will make it that it's still green while resting, but it will still let light through when the LEDs are on. To finish it up, we take the underside from its base and touch that up. And using some more polymer clay, we make some tubes for in between the pumps and the wok. A trick I learned for this is to use a comb to make a segmented texture. And we bake this before gluing it on. Same as with the already wired LED filled pumps. But as just white, they just wouldn't look right to the creature. So let's quickly add a base of black and some more gunmetal to make it just like the rest of the gear. To end this project, we add some more gloss onto the glowing spots, the eyes and the mouth first. When that is dried, we can add it to the skin as well. And with 1.5 hours of soldering LEDs and a switch in, we can finally say the final boss of this Custom Amiibo month, the Steelhead Custom Amiibo, is finally finished. Hey Creagears, Robert here. We hope you enjoyed this Custom Amiibo month. If your favorite boss didn't make the cut in the end, don't worry. If you could just let us know in the comments, we can try to make all of the bosses in later videos or even with the next Custom Amiibo month. But first we have 2 more videos for you guys with the Salmon Run theme. But these will go back to our regular schedule because... But these will all be in later episodes here on WVD Creations. So that's going to be all from us now. Keep those creative gears turning and we will see you in the next video.